Hello and Happy New Year! For the first few days of the new year, I was relatively busy, but now I finally find the time to continue my coverage of my international championship season. I'm playing the Master Division, and if you remember the last game, I managed to win a three-player game, and with that, actually have a very solid start so far. I have 3 games finished, 11 points. Both Vantablack and Multimedia are probably at the moment the biggest contenders for the first place. Vantablack being a half point in front of me, while Multimedia is a half a point behind me. And the game that we are going to take a look at today is a 4-player game featuring both Vantablack and Multimedia. So it could be a very deciding game. The last player who is participating in this game is wolvs, who hadn't had a great start, but as you can see, also has only 3 games finished. So also for him, everything is still possible. And now, without further ado, let's go. We are going to take a look at the game. I'm playing in the first position in this game, and first of all we're going to take a look at the leaders and wonders. And there's a little bit of lab synergy. We have Steve Jobs and Sid Meier, so not the most, but there's also Spaceflight Manhattan Project. We have Pierre, but no internet. We have both Chaplin and Fleming, but no Hollywood. Churchill is there for the military, but no Gandhi. In H2 we have ocean liner service but no Maria. We have both Suez Canal and Cook, so some colonization payoff is there. We have a bunch of culture leaders with Bach, Shakespeare and Antoni Gaudi. We have James Watt but without the railroad. And then we have Newton as a very strong economical leader. In H1 we have Universitas but no Silk Road, Forbidden City but no St. Peter's Basilica, Nemici Castle but no Great Wall. We have Jan Shishka as a military action leader, Nostradamus, Genghis Khan and Barbarossa to help with the strength. We have both Leonardo da Vinci and Gutenberg for some alchemy and printing press synergy, and then also Saladin is there. Yeah, I think the first decision for me in this game is not a particularly difficult one. I mean, no, I just don't think there's any alternative to taking the pyramids here. There are a lot of leaders coming down the row, and Tomer, if I take him, then pyramids and colossus might be taken away, so I don't think that's just a very straightforward pick here. Vantablack is then willing to take Homer, can get him together with the yellow card, but doesn't know yet what wonder he will be getting with him. wolvs then just takes Hammurabi, and Multimedia ends up taking the Engineering Genius plus the Colossus. I think he generally likes the Colossus quite a bit, but there's also some colonization payoffs, so certainly a game where the Colossus can shine. He's playing in last position, maybe that will make him a bit safer from potentially getting hit by strength events. Now it's my turn and I have to decide which leader do I want to go for. I start by building my mine. I have Moses and Ashoka available for 1 civil action, and then Hippocrates available for 2. There's also Boudica coming down the row, but I certainly won't take her for 3, and taking 2 yellow cards just to go for her the next turn is also not something I really consider here. Mainly it was a decision between Ashoka for 1 and Hippocrates for 2. There's Saladin, Nostradamus, potentially if you get an early alchemy, Leonardo, who all can work nicely as an early replacement leader for Hippocrates. But at the end I wasn't willing to pay an additional civil action here. Ashoka is not the greatest when playing in first position, but he does synergize nicely with having the pyramids, as additional civil actions are very helpful for him. You have more hand space to keep different colors in hand, and so I decided to go for Ashoka here. With deciding on Ashoka, there's another decision that I need to make, and that is whether I just want to elect him and increase my population, or do I want to use one of my civil actions to already take the first color in hand, which I could do by taking one of those yellow cards. And I decided here to actually take the stockpile and increase my population. That could of course backfire if there are some interesting cards available at the next turn, but the next turn is turn 3 in first position. Sometimes you need to spend your civil actions a bit awkward anyway. Of course, it could be that I get that I can just take an HA yellow card then at the next turn, but maybe the stockpile isn't that bad to have. The additional resource could potentially allow for finishing the pyramids a little bit quicker. And also I can just play it at every time when I find the civil action, while something like urban growth, if I don't use it, and it's not that easy to use it just at all the time to make space in your hand, and so I decided to just take the stockpile here to already have a yellow card in hand. I draw the Legion tactic in the Rebellion. Vantablack, interestingly, is willing to take the Colosseum here for 2 civil actions. Could have also taken the Stonehenge, but it requires an additional step, which is difficult with Homer. Not taking any wonder could also backfire with having Homer. And it's a 4-player game. The Colosseum, I think, is not that bad. And so he decides to go for that for 2. But certainly it's maybe not the ideal thing that you want to go for, grabbing the Colosseum for 2. Also maybe not the greatest combination with Homer. You don't necessarily want to finish that early. You maybe don't need the happy face from Homer as much. Wolves goes for Hammurabi, could now take the Stonehenge for 2, but he goes for something different. He goes for the Monarchy for 3 here. Maybe he could still have a shot at getting Stonehenge at the next turn, but of course with having Hammurabi can also consider to do a very early revolution at the next turn and then could increase his population with the military action from Hammurabi to get out of corruption. Martar decides to go for Hippocrates here, elects him, builds a mine, increases his population, so he does nothing special. Now it's my turn, I elect Ashoka. And here's the moment where I thought, even though it's a 4-player game, I thought about taking the printing press here, because I don't really want to spend any civil actions on taking those HA yellows, and starting on building the pyramids instead of building the second lab I do think is very viable, just getting the civil action going very early, and then I don't commit to the second lab. I can take the printing press now, activate the Ashoka bonus, and then there's at least some synergy. Anthony Gaudi, Shakespeare, Fleming, there's no Hollywood, but there's also Leonardo in H1. Gutenberg maybe not ideal because I want to commit to the printing press quickly if I go for that now. So I thought about it, it's a 4-player game, and maybe I would have gone for it if there would be no Pierre in the game, because then maybe the alternatives are just not that great. Of course, I could take something like Engineering Genius or Monarchy for 3, but that would also feel quite expensive. But with Pierre in the game, having the bread and circuses can just be quite strong. I can just keep it in hand for a while, have the second color for Ashoka secured, while when I go for the printing press, I would probably would like to develop it quickly to get some printing presses going. Then I need a new color for Ashoka again. As said, if there would be no Pierre, maybe I would be inclined here to take the printing press and try something with that, but here I at the end decided to build my second lab, get the second science production going earlier with that, and then take the bread and circuses to at least already get an additional resource production out of Ashoka. I draw 2 events, the call to arms in the developed territory. Vantablack takes the Engineering Genius, builds the second lab to also get the science production going, and then increases his population. Could have also elected Homer to stay out of consumption, but yeah, maybe wants to be prepared for some of the events that require a free population. Wolves could have gone for the Stonehenge this turn, maybe going for the Monarchy also peacefully, or maybe delaying the revolution by 1 turn, but he wants to get the revolution going as quickly as possible, and maybe can then go for an H1 wonder directly. Martar builds the second lab, takes the Monarchy for 2 civil actions, and then increases his population. Now it is my turn. I don't seed here, as all the events I don't necessarily want to push. In this turn I will increase my population. I will build a step of the pyramids that gets me out of corruption, and it's also almost, I could do more, but not in a good way. I don't want to commit science and bread and circuses. I don't want to play stockpile and increase population again, as I then wouldn't have any Ashoka bonus going. So I kind of need to spend the last 2 civil actions on taking some cards, and I could potentially take the Swordsman for 2 here. I have the Legion tactic drawn. Having a military technology can be quite important in 4-player games, or generally, 2-player games not that important, but in 3 and 4-player games I just would feel maybe quite a bit safer having that Swordsman. But at the end I decided to take the Irrigation and the Frugality, just allowing me the Frugality to potentially even increase my population twice at the next turn if I don't have anything interesting to do, and the Irrigation just also makes it that I have the full Ashoka bonus going from now on, and if maybe this copy of Iron and Alchemy will be taken away, it could maybe also be interesting to start investing into the Irrigation and try to get a lot of population out. I draw some events, the Migration, and also the Fighting Band tactic. Vantablack seeds, opens the development of crafts, will take the Iron for 2, goes for Homer, builds a step of the Colosseum, and then builds a warrior with Homer's resources to get out of corruption. At the next turn can maybe go for 2 Iron upgrades potentially. Wolves builds the second lab now, increases his population. Now we maybe see the downside of him not committing to any wonder, because, I mean, he could go for the Taj Mahal now, but if he doesn't, then the only way to get out of corruption for him is to build this religion, which is certainly not ideal, not something that you want to do, but he does it to solve the corruption here, and then takes the iron for 3 civil actions. Could have also gone for the alchemy, maybe. Could have then secured himself a copy of Swordsman together with it. Martin Bashir seeds, opens the development of science, and he actually just does a revolution, so the second revolution to monarchy that we are seeing in this game. And interestingly, he is willing to do the revolution despite having corruption, so values it quite highly to from now on have quite a nice amount of civil and military actions going. Maybe also the military action is a relevant factor here. Yes, the Colossus maybe wants to find the fitting events for that wonder, and yeah, so interesting that he is willing to do that revolution here. Now it's my turn, and I will this turn finish the pyramids, and then I go for a relatively straightforward line. I take the swordsman in hand, I get another chance to take it. Now I get it even for 1 civil action, so not taking it at the turn before has in hindsight worked out quite well. And I want to take the swordsman, not the knights, as I have the fitting tactics for it, and it's also of course 1 civil action cheaper, and so I'm fine with the swordsman. And then with the last 2 civil actions, I can't really go for an irrigation upgrade, it doesn't get me out of corruption, and so at the end I just increased my population with the frugality and just increased my population again, getting me out of corruption, having already spent some civil actions and increasing my population, so that I don't have to spend them in one of the future turns. Ideally I would like to get some nice upgrades going for my economy, so having now those population increases out of the way, so that I have the freedom to maybe get into alchemy or iron if one of those technologies should be on the road the next turn, or maybe going for a wonder like Universitas, maybe Himeji Castle, Forbidden City. Yeah, I'm just now prepared to go for one of those, and I'm also hoping to maybe get a nice opportunity to invest the 8 resources that I'm actually having saved up at the next turn. I could have potentially also increased my population without the frugality. I think that would have got me out of corruption, and then instead of grabbing the swordsman, I could have grabbed the alchemy for 2, making certain that I can increase my population. But then there's the danger of missing out on the swordsman completely. The legion and fighting band tactic are the tactics that I'm having available, so I would put myself in danger, and also it's still alchemy for 2 with not using the frugality. It's not that ideal, and I can maybe just hope that something will be available for a similar price at hopefully the next turn, and if not, hopefully relatively soon. And if there's nothing, I can also start some food upgrades with the irrigation. I keep the rebellion and the legion tactic, draw a colonization card and the trade routes agreement. Vantablack starts some upgrades to his iron mines and takes the alchemy. Also replace the fighting band tactic to go up to 3 strength. Wolves goes for the iron, goes for an upgrade, increases his population, takes Saladin, elects Saladin, and then takes the knights. Doesn't decide to go for the Taj Mahal here, which he could have taken for free, but maybe rather wants to stay open for those other potentially strong wonders. Martin Bashir seeds, opens the development of politics. Everyone gets 3 additional draws. I have now some strength event actually, also the naval trade agreement pact. Martin can this turn finish the Colossus, takes the swordsman, has now more strength, can potentially get even more. Also gets the cartography for 1 civil action. With that and Colossus, he can set himself very nicely to win some colonies if he draws some now. As you can see, I start my turn by offering the naval trade agreement. I again didn't really want to put any of those events in. I don't necessarily want to go for bread and circuses too early, so committing to the rebellion could be dangerous. And the strength event and colonies, I'm not really that nicely prepared anyway. So instead I offered a naval trade agreement, and as you can see, I actually offered it to Martin Bashir, who, with getting now that additional colonization force as well, in addition to the Colossus and potentially the cartography which he can develop, it could be that he is in a position to just easily win the colonies that he seeds into the deck. But I nonetheless was willing to give him that, because I also thought that the additional blue tokens can be quite valuable for me in the situation, as I don't have the easiest way to spend my resources here. I can get out of corruption, but yeah, it just feels maybe it's just a bit easier, and I thought the blue tokens this turn and also the following turns could be useful, and at the end I just was willing to offer that to Martin Bashir, even though it could maybe give him a benefit in regards of the colonies and make it very unlikely that maybe the other players can get one of those, and then he might get into a strong Suez Canal, so maybe I shouldn't do it, but at the end I just wanted to get the 2 blue tokens here. I start my turn by going for an irrigation upgrade, and I will actually go for an interesting decision here. I do think I have some different options. I could just go for a second farm upgrade, and I could take some cards. I could just take Nostradamus in hand. It was something that I very much considered, because I only have 2 military actions, but at least I have some events drawn and can at least maybe keep one of them in hand so that I have something to seed. The additional strength will be very helpful for me. I could take something like Masonry in hand. I probably want to go for one of those H1 wonders, as I have a bunch of resources to spend, and then having the Masonry could be quite strong, and then I could maybe, as last civil action, take Frugality or something. I could also think about taking, for example, Masonry and Gutenberg instead of Nostradamus, hoping that I will get a chance to get one of the copies of Alchemy and then use Gutenberg as somewhat of a transitional leader. All of those options I think could be nice. Maybe they are better than the option that I went for, because I decided to actually increase my income this turn, and I did it by going for printing press and building one. That's of course a bit critical. In 4-player games you can get punished quite heavily for this. But on the other hand, I'm going up to 3 science production from now on. There's some synergy in the game for it, and I have produced quite a bit of additional food with Ashoka. I have a Happy Face solution already in hand. I have the irrigation going now, so I have some additional population, and I felt like I can maybe support that printing press, and at the end I decided to go for that. I was a bit worried though that Vantablack could maybe go for Nostradamus here, and maybe Marta Pescher could then go for Jan Žižka, and maybe then I could have some problems with the strength. Ideally, I would like to get one of those leaders for my own at the next turn. Maybe I should just take Nostradamus this turn, but if I don't get them, there are still some leaders that are fine for me. Now that I have a printing press, Leonardo is actually quite a solid option, and also Barbarossa. I can now, with the irrigation, save up some food. Could be quite interesting, especially if he's available soon, so that I can build the military with him before the event deck flips, without having committed to any military yet. So I thought there are other interesting leaders coming. I don't necessarily need to take Nostradamus for 2. Maybe taking Gutenberg and Masonry for 1 and hoping to get the Alchemy could be interesting. But I'm also somewhat in a position where when I get the Alchemy, I would like to do the upgrades quickly. So I would need to get the Alchemy and something else, so that I can maybe use Gutenberg to get the Alchemy going slowly while also doing something else that is useful. So I think Gutenberg Masonry certainly could also be an interesting option, and I'm not sure if the printing press is the right call here, but I do think there are some arguments for it, and let's see how it will work out. Also, I will reveal the Legion tactic. I was thinking that maybe I could have a shot at still getting Nostradamus. I certainly wanted to keep at least one event, also the colonization card, as maybe I could be a bit vulnerable now that I have committed to the printing press. Vantablack finishes the Colosseum. I was interested to see, will he just grab Nostradamus for 2 civil actions? He wouldn't then be able to elect him though, as he would not get as he doesn't get the civil action back when replacing Homer, and so instead, as he doesn't have any civil action left after taking Nostradamus, and instead he goes for Gutenberg actually and uses him to develop the Alchemy that he has in hand. That means now that I'm guaranteed to either get Nostradamus or Žižka at my next turn, as wolvs already has Saladin, and with that I felt a bit safer about my decision of committing to printing presses. Wolvs goes for 2 iron upgrades, takes the Alchemy in hand and a Code of Laws. Still hasn't gotten a wonder. Marta Pescher seeds, opens the development of planning. The options for that development are development of warfare, trade routes, and civil life, so certainly some interesting options. Marta Pescher uses the development of civil life to increase his population. He had a choice here between Nostradamus and Jan Žižka. With being at 3 military actions, I do think Nostradamus can sometimes be the better choice. But maybe he wanted to be able to keep more cards in hand. If he wants to set up for a colonization game, it could still be somewhat limiting to be at 3 military actions and maybe miss out on draws if he starts building some units. And maybe he can also be put a bit more pressure on his opponents, so that maybe are the arguments to go for Jan Žižka here, even though with having a 3rd military action already secured, I do feel like Nostradamus often can be the better choice. But if he, as he does now, starts building some military, he can do so without missing out on any draws, making it that maybe he can actually draw a lot of colonies, as he has a very big colonization force of 4 now. Very early also, actually. We are still not that near the end of H1. At the start of my turn, I don't push. Nostradamus is now the leader that I will go for, and I didn't want to push any event in hand without him. I want to wait with that until I get him. The event deck could potentially flip, and also Multimedia has of course gone up to 7 strength, so here I decided to start building some units. I developed a swordsman, build one, build another one, going up to 7 strength myself, taking Nostradamus. Potentially I could just take the iron here, who knows, maybe even Machu Picchu could be an option then, even though that might also be taken away by wolves, even though he could also go for the Magic Castle. And yeah, but nonetheless, I would just for guaranteed have something to invest my resources into. But there are still some other interesting wonders coming, and I also felt I didn't want to pass on the breakthrough for one civil action, and so I decided to take that, play the stockpile. I have now the breakthrough to still have the full Ashoka bonus. I don't elect Nostradamus quite yet, as the event deck hasn't flipped, to keep the additional economical value from Ashoka for another turn, and I was hoping that I will find something else to invest my resources into. I keep the colonization card in the rebellion, as hopefully or probably we are entering a point where I at some point can just commit to the bread and circuses. Vantablack goes for the knights, builds one, and then uses Gutenberg to upgrade a lab, while then taking the drama at the cost of an iron upgrade, so he is willing to pay for that. There's some synergy, there's Bach, Gaudi, potentially Shakespeare, even though that's ambitious, and then also Fleming and Chaplin in H3, so let's see how the drama pick will work out for him. wolvs decides to offer the open borders agreement to Vantablack. Both of them will now have an additional military action. He develops the knights, builds one, takes the theology, interestingly, for 2 civil actions, but if he wants to increase his population and maybe put another worker into the military, then once the age ends, he has an uprising issue, so maybe needs the theology to make sure that he isn't too vulnerable, or that he can put another worker into the military. And then interestingly, he's taking the Magic Castle and also the reserves. The reserves is interesting because, I mean, if the right developments are revealed, maybe it could mean the difference between getting an additional population or not, but it doesn't feel like the most efficient card to take here, and maybe just building a Step of Imeji could be considered as well. Maybe it is also actually to put the iron in the discard spot, but probably not, because Multimedia also still has the iron, so he might just take it anyway. He seeds in the development of agriculture is revealed, so maybe wolves will now actually get another population out with the reserves. Multimedia increases his population, builds another warrior, takes the iron, and interestingly then goes for the Machu Picchu. It might take a while until he can finish that, but then he maybe has some strong production going, has not the most civil actions, has not the most science income. It could block him from getting Suez Canal. There are also other very strong H2 wonders, so I'm not totally convinced by that. But maybe he also doesn't have the most interesting ways of spending the civil actions, and Machu Picchu certainly can still turn out to be a strong wonder, but it seems to me like it will just be a bit too late here. Now it's my turn. I again don't want to push, I want to wait for Nostradamus, and so I will elect him now, as it will be my last turn in H1. There are other wonders coming down the road, but they are late, so I can't take them for cheap, so I again have to find another way to get out of corruption here, and so I just already this turn decided to spend my civil actions on fixing my happy faces, so that I don't have to do it at my next turn. I increase my population, take the cultural heritage, and increase my population again. First I thought that I want to use the opportunity that I'm still being in H1 to upgrade this warrior to swordsman, as I might want to do it at some point anyway, and now I can do it without missing out on H2 draw. But the thing is, there's one development left, and there's a chance that it could be the development of markets, and if the development of markets are revealed, the 2 resources at the next turn could potentially allow me to just take and finish the Universitas, which I do think would give my science quite a strong boost. So because of that, I actually decided to not do this upgrade, to just leave that possibility alive that I might be able to do it. I could have also taken the alchemy, I think, and just gone for the alchemy, but I don't like it to invest into it that late. I would need to spend some science. When I, for example, go for the Universitas, I can keep my science saved up. I'm in a position where both Wolves and Marta Beschör, the players playing in front of me, have both already a copy of Monarchy going, so I have a decent chance of getting an H2 government form going early, and with that, I don't necessarily want to invest science into anything else here, and rather just want to start building the Universitas. I also have knowledge about Dark Ages, which is nice, and with that, yeah, I can allow myself to maybe just save up a lot of resources, science. I could have also gone for the Code of Laws, but I have already 5 civil actions, and I again just rather want to save up science for a government form. I draw some cards, no new event, but a trade routes agreement pact. H2 starts, Marta Beschör will get additional draws and an additional yellow token, so he has 2 things that he's getting at the beginning of the age. Vantablack seeds, and as you can see, there are indeed the development of markets revealed, so the Universitas option might actually be a possibility. Vantablack then goes for another upgrade with Gutenberg, increases his population twice to get out of corruption, builds another knight, is now at 10 strength and takes the breakthrough actually for 2 civil actions, again missing out on the upgrade, so not having done the upgrade and instead having corrupted drama will continue to, or means that he again misses out on some economical value as he now again didn't find the time to do the upgrade. As we can see, the reserves pick from Wolves works out. Thanks to the additional food from the development of agriculture, he can now increase his population in additional time, develops the theology, upgrades 1 and has now 2 instead of only 1 free population, which allows him to actually build a knight and a warrior. Also, of course, Wolves seeded, or no, Vantablack seeded a card into the deck, which I saw with Nostradamus, and it was the Reds, which could be a bit annoying for me, but I also don't have the most foods saved up in some free population already, so it's also not the most concerning. Wolves, interestingly, takes the strength from Saladin here. Could be a sign that maybe there are some strength events coming. When we take a look at the event deck, however, we see that he himself didn't push any, but maybe he could think that Marta Beschör, with having the Colossus and Jan Žižka, might have been brave enough to put some into the deck. Marta Beschör seeds, and a Fray is revealed. Wolves would have been part of that regardless now, so the strength in that for that doesn't pay off really, but still there is actually a strength event coming, which I'm sadly missing out on. Marta Beschör takes the additional resource from the development of markets, starts some upgrades, goes for 2 upgrades and then builds a step of the Machu Picchu. That could allow him to maybe play the reserves at the next turn, finish the Machu Picchu, and then get a big economical value or bonus going. Also having the wonder build out of the way so that he is free again to maybe grab one of those strong H2 wonders. But he's very low in science now, so let's see if he will be able to invest all of those resources. But for now he still has some things to spend, needs to finish the wonder first, still has some upgrades to do. I have only 1 event in hand, it's the Rebellion, and I'm willing to push it into the deck. Marta Beschör, of course, also just seeded, and he actually seeded a card that he drew with the Colossus, and that was the Ravages of Time. So I know that I relatively soon will already lose the Pyramids. The inhabited territory is revealed, and I actually liked quite a bit what I saw here, because Marta Beschör, despite his big colonization force, is not the one winning it, and instead Vantablack wins it, but has to pay a price. If there are more colonies coming, then it means that maybe now the colonies are a bit divided between some players, so hopefully Vantablack winning this colony might mean that Marta Beschör doesn't find it, or maybe can't that easily set up for a very big Suez Canal, and maybe James Cook or something, and Vantablack wins this colony, but as said, at least has to pay a price for it. I take the additional resource from the development of markets, and as you can see, I actually go just for the finishing the Universitas here. It's not a completely clear decision, because as you can see in the row, there's actually also the scientific method. I could go for 1 upgrade this turn, that would give me the same science increase as finishing the Universitas does, and I have the option to go for another upgrade soon, even though it's somewhat expensive, but I have enough resources to do it. There's also Newton in the game. Maybe I should go for the scientific method here. But then again, both Wolves and Marta Beschör have the monarchy. If I spend some science into scientific method, now I'm not prepared to go for a government form at the next turn, and so at the end I decided to rather go for the Universitas instead of the scientific method. Maybe going for the scientific method could also be considered to take it away from, for example, Wolves or Marta Beschör, who at some point both could use it very nicely. But on the other hand, Universitas could also still be an interesting wonder for example, Vantablack, maybe also Wolves after finishing the Michi Castle, so maybe I don't need to consider that much with Newton in the game. Maybe I should aim towards the scientific method setup, but yeah, at the end, both Wolves and Marta Peugeot having the monarchy made it that I actually will go for the Universitas here, going up to 5 science production and also increasing my culture production by a little bit. And yeah, so I'm not sure about this. Maybe I should go for the scientific methods here. But yeah, maybe if there's a government form early, then I also will get quite a boost being able to develop that very quickly. Vantablack seeds, he puts the civil unrest into the deck, so after my rebellion we will get another happy face related event in the next event deck. The border conflict is revealed, now Wolves is rewarded for being the strongest, even though again, thanks to, or because Vantablack sent some units away, the strength taking it didn't really matter, but it definitely could have if Vantablack wouldn't have won the colony. Vantablack takes the selective breeding and goes for his iron upgrade finally, rebuilds his units going back to 10 strength and then takes the rich land. Now it's Wolf's turn, he seeds, opens the knowledge of the ancients, that's a fine wonder for me. Scoring 3 additional science, he will this turn finish the Meiji Castle, increases his population, takes the Forbidden City, which will be a nice upgrade or combination together with his monarchy, and then just builds a step of it, being a civil action efficient. This turn he is also willing to take the civil action from Saladin, as he's now the strongest anyway because of the Meiji Castle. Marta Peugeot seeds, and the one event that I had knowledge of is now revealed. The rats, I sadly lose 4 food, but yeah, it was just likely that I will lose a bunch of food here, and maybe it's also not too bad for me immediately. And Marta Peugeot gets hit the hardest here, losing 6 food that he has stored up. He takes the scientific method, I do think that's a very important card for him, and now he might be able to invest those resources of the Machu Picchu quite nicely actually. Also takes the bread and circuses, maybe wants to compete for Pierre potentially, also maybe just having a happy face solution in hand, and with the last civil action he then played to reserve some resources. Now it's my turn. As you can see, I didn't draw an event with my first H2 draws, but I decided to offer the promise of military protection to Vantablack. I myself decided on taking the 4 additional strength, while Vantablack gets the additional culture production here. I wasn't certain if I should offer it, and if, first of all, I lose the 2 blue tokens now from the Naval Trade Agreement, but at least Marta Peugeot also loses the colonization force. And the thing is, I have now seen some events with Nostradamus, and from the H1 event, Wolves has actually seeded the Uncertain Borders into the deck. Marta Peugeot at his turn actually seeded the Iconoclasm, so both Ravages and Iconoclasm might be revealed relatively soon this game. And with the Uncertain Borders coming, I thought maybe the strength makes a difference for that. Generally, if I keep the pact for a while, just playing H2, maybe even H3 with 4 additional strength, can definitely make a difference and might be worth the culture loss. And Vantablack is Wolves is the one who seeded the Uncertain Borders, so I thought he maybe that wouldn't accept this pact, but Vantablack might accept this pact, and so I offered it, and he is taking the additional culture production here. I have a lot of science saved up. Sadly, an H2 government form isn't revealed yet, but there are some other cards that I can invest my science into that I kinda all wanted to take. The strategy is there, the architecture is there, the cavalrymen are there. I don't have a cavalry technology yet. There are also a copy of Rifleman, but then I would just take a lot of cards in hand, which wouldn't feel that great. And also I know that the rebellion is coming soon, so I kinda need to build the spread and circuses. And first my thought was I just want to develop the strategy, get stronger, which could matter for the Uncertain Borders. I get additional draws, making it more likely that I can seed with Nostradamus, and then I build the bread and circuses. However, I'm in a position where resources are very, very precious for me. And because of that, I decided to go for the architecture here and save already a resource while building the arena. Thanks to the arena, I'm still getting a bit stronger, so I still have chances winning the Uncertain Borders, but I do get 1 draw less, so it's not that likely that I will draw an event. And yeah, overall I'm not sure, but I do think, as said, resources are just extremely valuable for me here, and with that I was at the end willing to develop the architecture first instead of the strategy. I keep the colonization cards in hand, Sadly, as you can see, I don't draw any event, but at least another colonization card. Vantablack will go for the selective breeding, goes for 2 upgrades actually, takes the Rifleman, for now doesn't have anything to do with Gutenberg. Wolves, maybe just to use this extra military action somehow, tries a blunder on Martin Pêcheur, but he can defend. He will then this turn finish the Forbidden City, take the selective breeding, the patriotism in the rich land. Is now at 7 civil actions with Saladin. Doesn't take the strength, so despite him knowing that the uncertain borders is coming, he isn't willing to put that or to use that. It's of course not guaranteed that the event will be revealed. Now Martin Pêcheur seeds again, he pushes the refugees, so the 4 additional strength from the promise of military protection could of course also end up being very relevant for that event. Also interesting that Martin Pêcheur is willing to put that event into the deck. And then the strategic territory is revealed. I know that in the next event deck there's actually no colony coming. I have a bunch of colonization cards, and so I was willing to bid on that colony here, and I actually win it for a swordsman in all of my cards. Getting the additional draws now also gives me a chance to actually get an event and seed it. However, I dropped now also a bit in strength, meaning that if I should seed, there's a chance that I miss out in the uncertain borders or I'm not winning it. As you can see, I drew the Independence Declaration. I do have the option to seed, but I also have the Scientific Cooperation, which can turn out to be a very strong pact. Martin Pêcheur this turn will take the Suez Canal. I was also, when bidding for that colony, thinking that if Martin Pêcheur doesn't win it, maybe he doesn't go for the Suez Canal, and maybe I get a bit lucky and draw an H2 colony, and then out of the sudden I could go for the Suez Canal myself. But Martin Pêcheur, despite not winning a colony and despite not having seeded one into the next deck, is still willing to go for the Suez Canal, which makes me think that he probably has a relatively strong H2 colony already in hand, as I think otherwise it would be too much of a gamble, and then he maybe hopes to draw even more colonies that he at some point can win with his big colonization force. He then also goes for the Swordsman. So far he maybe has been a bit unlucky. He has this big colonization first, but the 2 colonies that were revealed were won by his opponents, and especially my colony win was heavily influenced by some lucky defense card draws. Now it's my turn. I could try offering the Scientific Cooperation, but it would make me drop quite a bit in strength immediately, which I didn't like. And also I thought it's unlikely that one of my opponents would accept it, and so instead I ceded. I could also do nothing with my politics action, but I just wanted to get a culture with Nostradamus. If the uncertain borders are revealed, it is like it is, but there's also a chance that the rebellion will be revealed, which would hurt Martin Pêcheur. I do think civil actions are very, very precious for him in the situation, so just making sure that the rebellion is revealed before his next turn could also be quite strong. So I see the Independence Declaration, and sadly, the uncertain borders are revealed, not a rebellion. I will get strongest now, so maybe I could have waited with seeding, but at the end, the extra culture of Nostradamus was just too tempting. I will certainly start my turn by taking the constitutional monarchy, being able to invest my science into something useful. I develop it, and then there are just a bunch of cards that I think I really want to take here. I want to take the cannons, and I also want to take James Watt. I can keep Nostradamus as long as I would like to keep him, because I do think he's a strong leader to have here, helping me with the strength, scoring me some culture, giving me some event knowledge. And as soon as I have a chance to get into coal, I can just go for James Watt, and he will offer me just a lot of value. All of the other players are on iron, so hopefully I'm basically almost guaranteed to get at least one of the copies. I don't think there will be 2 denials or something. The worst that can happen is that the codes are very late, but as said, I can just keep Nostradamus until then, so James Watt just seemed as a very, very strong leader for me here that I certainly wanted to take. I certainly also wanted to take the efficient upgrade, as that will maybe accelerate it quite nicely how quickly I can go for those upgrades. I will then rebuild the swordsman, being now the strongest, which might at least matter for the refugees if those are revealed quickly. I can rebuild the swordsman now with the constitutional monarchy without missing out on any draws. And I could potentially, I think I'm only noticing that right now. But what I could have considered here is to not build a swordsman, but actually build a warrior, because the thing is, I have no 4 resources. There's the efficient upgrade. If there's coal in the row, now that I have built a swordsman, I can only go for 1 upgrade with James Watt. If I build a warrior, then together with the efficient upgrade, I could actually go for 2 upgrades with James Watt. And if I'm being on 14 or at 15 strength for now, it doesn't make a big difference. Maybe I have a free military action anyway, especially if I should commit to strategy at some point to upgrade it later on. So that could actually be a small misplay here that I'm just realizing right now when recording. So yeah, that maybe could have been better, I think, because if the coal is in the row already at the next turn, it certainly could make a difference whether I'm able to get 2 upgrades going immediately or only 1. I have now my last civil action. I could just play the cultural heritage, getting that out of the way, scoring the science and culture from it. But there's also the justice system on the row. There's also the opera on the row, but I don't think with my setup I necessarily want to take that here, and I rather thought about the justice system. My first instinct or gut feeling when I'm just looking at the board would be to say, no, I have the strategy, I will get into coal, it's just too expensive, I have 7 civil actions anyway. And I would agree with myself here, but we have to take the events into account, and one event that Multimedia has seeded, which I've seen with Nostradamus, is the Ravages of Time, and I could of course lose the Universitas, but it would be quite painful as well, so I will very likely lose the Pyramids, maybe even relatively soon, and being at 6 civil actions certainly can be somewhat limiting. So it could then be important maybe to have the option to go back up to 7 civil actions. Additionally, I have the Scientific Cooperation Pact in hand. Maybe I don't necessarily want to offer it in the near future, but who knows, maybe I would like to do it. And then that costs only 5 science out of the sudden, and maybe could make the gains that I can get out of the pact potentially even stronger. So at the end I decided to also pick the justice system here, making it a turn where I have actually picked 5 cards from the row. I draw some cards, I also draw an event that I could push in the next turn, the International Agreement. Vantablack has taken the drama earlier, even at a bit of a price, with delaying his mine upgrade for a bit, and now he also gets the follow-up on that and is able to take Bach here. For now, however, doesn't elect Bach, instead uses Gutenberg to take the journalism here, and also probably takes the breakthrough, so maybe wants to get some more Gutenberg activations, maybe with developing the journalism at the next turn before electing Bach and getting the 2 culture production from him. Could have maybe also thought about Robespierre, with him still needing a government form, but he has a nice amount of science saved up. Wolves, as you can see, takes Newton here for very expensive. Even though he is only alchemy, I was thinking, I mean, it's a solid leader for himself. He gets an even bigger science boost, even if it's only alchemy, so that might be fine. But I was thinking maybe there could also be some denial reasons involved, because Multimedia with the scientific method could certainly benefit from him quite nicely. So, I mean, he can't develop the scientific method this turn though, and it would be quite expensive to take him. And both I and Vantablack have already committed, so I'm not totally certain, but of course if he develops the alchemy, he immediately saves a civil action and gets an additional science. Maybe he valued the science just very highly and thought that Newton nonetheless might just be the best leader that he can get, and that he wanted to secure him for himself. Takes then the Ralphman and the efficient upgrade, maybe also because of hand space issues could have some difficulties just using his civil actions effectively if he doesn't take a card like Newton that he can then elect, and but I mean, I guess he had the civil action from Saladin, so maybe it could have been possible. Matapecheur this turn finishes the Suez Canal. Sadly, it doesn't push, so he could maybe avoid to dodge the rebellion now, depending on what he will do. I was interested to see what colony he will get with the Suez Canal. And as you can see, it's the vast territory too, so it's certainly a strong one, and he will have a lot of population to work with. Luckily, he needs to increase his population here to get out of corruption, making it that he again is vulnerable to the rebellion. And that I will also exploit now, because I again want to push with Nostradamus. Of course, I don't know if I will win the International Agreement, and potentially it can be quite an influential event, so maybe I should be careful, but the card from Nostradamus will just push me towards seeding here, and also knowing that Matapecheur will get hit by it, that one of my opponents will suffer from it. The rebellion is revealed. And as you can see, there's just a copy of coal revealed, which I was very happy to see, and that made it that I this turn immediately went for James Watt, took the coal, developed the coal, went for an upgrade, took the breakthrough and the reserves, and we can see, I do think the turn is very solid, but I do think we can see that I probably should have built a warrior here, because then instead of taking the reserves, I could have just gone for another coal upgrade, which is probably the more efficient way to play. Still not bad like that. Also having the opportunity to use the reserves of food could be very important. But just getting the upgrade going quicker, doing is something that I want to do anyway, and getting the resources earlier because of having the upgrade done earlier probably would have been better, and so maybe I should have not built a warrior. On the other hand, of course, now I'm at 15 strength. I'm prepared to potentially win the refugees. If I would only be at 14 strength in Vantablack seeds, then the refugees could be revealed and I would not win it. So with taking that into account and with at least being able to use that last civil action somewhat nicely, maybe it's not that clear overall. But I could now just upgrade this warrior to swordsman, so I maybe should have just made it that I have the option to decide whether I want to be prepared for the refugees or whether I want to do this mine upgrade. Instead of taking the reserves, I again could also consider playing the cultural heritage. Additional science will still be quite valuable for me. But I thought my food production is not that great. There might actually still be a chance that I could go for the ocean liner service, but I'm certainly not guaranteed that I will have the chance, and just getting an additional population with that might just be extremely important. So I at the end decided on taking the reserves instead of just playing the cultural heritage. I will draw some cards here and a lot of events that I can potentially push. And Vantablack seeds. Sadly, no refugees are revealed, but at least something that also maybe is a bit annoying, especially for Vantablack, who maybe planned on doing another Gutenberg activation. Now he will not have the opportunity to do that, and he won't get the civil action back when going for Bach. So I think that Iconoclasm is quite annoying for him, especially with being that low on civil action, even though that will change now because he has enough science saved up to go for the Republic, has now the nice Colosseum Republic pairing. Takes the cannons, develops the drama, and yeah, can't really build one because of civil actions. Builds a rifleman. Sadly, I wasn't happy to see it because now he would be the one who would win the refugees. Wolves, interestingly, goes for a war territory here against Martabecheur, so now things certainly are spicing up a little bit here. He develops the rifleman, plays the patriotism, goes for 2 upgrades, and he has the classic army tactic going up to 20 strength, could potentially even sacrifice, even though I do think that would be extremely costly in this position. It won't end up being a big war, but I mean, even if it's a very, very small war, you will always, if you have more strength, at least steal 1 yellow token, which is a reasonable gain compared to maybe something like War Technology, where if you win it, for example, by 1, you will only steal 1 culture. The 1 yellow token is probably worth more. And he also forces Martabecheur to do maybe an awkward reaction here. He has only 3 civil actions, so even though there's now a cannon on the row and maybe he could have something like defensive army, he just doesn't have the civil action to execute it this turn, and so instead the best that he can do is going for some swordsman, and he can also upgrade his warrior if he would like to, going up to 19 strength, but still 1 strength behind wolves, who without sacrificing can now steal a yellow token. Sadly, that war and wolves and Martabecheur getting stronger by quite a bit also has some bad consequences for me, because now out of the sudden I'm actually the weakest for the refugees. And an easy way that I can use to get stronger is just to develop the strategy here. Then I'm at 18 strength, but I was looking at Vantablack's position, and I thought it's definitely not unlikely, if he will start his turn by being the weakest, that he will just build a knight, or maybe just even cancel the promise of military protection pact. And as he might potentially do this anyway, and as he might, even if he doesn't do it, get stronger anyway, and I might get hit by the refugees anyway, I thought now that I don't have Nostradamus any longer, might be a nice time to give it a try, and I wanted to get the scientific operation going, because that actually allows me to go for both justice system and the strategy this turn. But of course, if I want to have if I want that it will be accepted, I maybe also have to offer to an opponent who can get something out of it. Vantablack maybe doesn't get that much out of it, but Wolves has Newton, can also develop some techs, and also he knows that the other pact, the Promise of Military Protection Pact, will be cancelled, and with that I was thinking I should have a decent chance that it will be accepted. Worst case, I can maybe just cancel the pact next turn again, and I have certainly gotten something nice out of it, because it's unlikely that wolves will develop 3 technologies next turn, and so I decided to offer it to wolves, and I was confident that he would accept, and he indeed accepts, so that we have both now this pact going. And the question this turn was if I still want to go for the ocean liner service, and I kind of thought it's maybe somewhat necessary. It's of course very late. It makes it that the turn gets a bit awkward. Normally I would just like to do 2 upgrades with James Watt, but especially now that I lost the promise of military protection pack, but also if I would have kept it, because it would not be a reliable source of strength, it could be cancelled by Vantablack. I need to spend 1 civil action to develop the strategy, so I can't go for my upgrades as quickly as I would like to, but the thing is, if I am just being stuck on irrigation, I'm very limited in regards of my population. Of course, I could hope for an early mechanized agriculture or something with James Watt and a scientific cooperation pact. Who knows, even getting into selective breeding on top of the irrigation is something worth considering. But it's also that the ocean liner service could still be quite nice for my opponents. Maybe Vantablack can take it relatively cheaply, has some resource production that he can invest. With Bach, maybe even more population could still be nice despite his nice food income, so that he can build a bunch of cheap dramas without neglecting his military. But if maybe he might not go for it, but then wolvs has not fixed the science income yet, maybe it's still nice for him to go for selective breeding, as he can develop it for free with Newton, but still I do think he very likely might just go for the ocean liner. And so I also go for a little bit of a denial here, but also just mainly thinking about myself. I thought that if I get now the strong population income, even if it's finished relatively late, it will still make my H3 hopefully a lot smoother. So I took the ocean liner service. Thanks to the scientific cooperation pact, I can now develop the strategy and adjust the system. I have 1 civil action left. And I will now go for 1 upgrade with James Watt, having enough resource left to finish the ocean liner service at the next turn. Sadly, as you can see, I don't find a civil action to use the cultural heritage here. In both the last 2 turns, I could have just bladed instead of doing something else. Now at the end, I will actually discard it. The science could have been useful, especially now with having the pact, so it doesn't feel great. But having the reserves in hand, I think, will also not bad and might end up being important. So yeah, maybe it was still a fine decision, but maybe I should have also just played it at one of the earlier turns. I am actually the weakest now, as said, with 4 additional strength from the promise of military protection. It would have been stronger now, but also, as said, Vantablack can easily get stronger. And so I have just wanted to get the scientific cooperation pack going. Luckily he doesn't see it yet. Maybe I will have the chance to get stronger at my next turn. He starts some culture reduction with Bach, with building that drama. Builds another knight, is now actually the strongest. Takes the urban growth, another urban growth, and the organized religion. As with losing the 2 yellow tokens, he might need a happy face solution soon. The dramas alone might not be enough. Now it's Wolf's turn. He first of all will steal a yellow token from Multimedia, develops the selective breeding for free, using the scientific cooperation pact, developing the code of laws, also using the scientific cooperation pact. So at this point we both got 2 technologies out of it. He then takes the cannons, the journalisms, and the architecture. Multimedia, first of all H3 starts. I sadly lose the cultural heritage. Multimedia gets additional draws to the Colossus. Ravages of Time hasn't been revealed yet, so that's nice for him. And Pact also will end. Multimedia seeds. And maybe he would have hoped for Ravages of Time or Refugees, so that it's guaranteed that he doesn't get hit by it. Unfortunately for him, the civil unrest is revealed just after the players lost their yellow tokens. Also Vantablack will be targeted by it, so I of course was quite happy to see that, as it's now the best event probably that I want to see at this point. And now Multimedia this turn starts upgrading to scientific method. We can see that his slow civil actions, and of course he also got hit by the rebellion, has delayed his development quite a bit. Of course he also got hit by the war, so for him it's a bit of an unfortunate series of events, and he has now some big production going with Machu Picchu and Suez Canal, but he is now just very late, is playing on low actions, so we after his turn can maybe also take a look at the overall positions, but I think he has certainly a challenging one, but still he has the big income, and there's certainly still the chance that he can do something with it. He increases his population twice to get out of corruption, and then upgrades his last farm, making it that he again can increase his population twice at the next turn if he would like to, but also just getting the production going as early as he can. As said, we can take a look at the overall overview as well. The culture is relatively close. Martin, now that the civil unrest was revealed, is a bit behind. Vantablack with Bach will maybe get a little bit of a lead, but it's overall relatively close. Martin has a clear disadvantage with the civil actions. I have actually the most civil actions, but will lose one soon to the Ravages of Time. Vantablack has the Bach setup, can copy the classic army tactics soon. He will lose the Colosseum though to the Ravages of Time, and if I should decide denying the military theory, but I have the strategy, and a little spoiler, I won't do it, there's just too much else to do at my next turn. If he would miss out on that, or if that wouldn't be on the road, then I think that could be quite a bit tricky, but now he just will be able to go for the military theory, and then losing the Colosseum maybe doesn't hurt him as much. And then he at least has Bach and maybe the possibility to just build cheap dramas that will score him quite a decent amount of culture. Wolves has this Newton going. If he should get his hands on maybe computers or multimedia, Newton could certainly make it that he gets a very strong economy. Maybe he has also a chance to get an H3 government form at some point, but already with Newton especially, he has a nice amount of action. So overall, I think it's relatively balanced. With maybe Martin being a bit behind, as he is that low in civil actions and also behind in culture. Also his military setup isn't the best, so I think for him it's looking a bit tricky, but all of the other players are maybe relatively equally strong, I would say. Now it is my turn, and I will do an interesting decision here. Because I was first of all, of course, just thinking about my turn, and I considered two main lines. Either I just finish the ocean liner service, get that going as quickly as possible. I could even play the reserves for resources, going for another coal upgrade, getting my economy going as quickly as I can. But I will then stay the weakest, and I have to expect that I will lose the population to the refugees, meaning that the population that I will gain with the ocean liner service is basically lost immediately. However, the classic army tactic is now available to copy for me. And if I play the reserves for food, and if I'm maybe willing to dispense something, either maybe the mine, the lab, or the warrior, I can actually build two cavalrymen, copy the tactic, and instead of the weakest, I will end up being the strongest. And then if the refugees are revealed, I will actually gain a population instead of likely what would happen if I finish the ocean liner service, just losing the population that I would have gained. And also, of course, losing the culture while then winning the culture. So I thought it could actually be quite interesting for me to get stronger here and go for the refugees play. The thing is, there are still two events in the deck, so it's not guaranteed that it will be revealed very quickly. And taking a look at Vantablack's turn, it could just be that he takes the military theory, increases his population to prevent his uprising, maybe even building an additional drama, and with the military theory he then would again overtake me in strength. So I thought, okay, I might do this big investment into the classic army, and at the end I might just not win the refugees. At least I wouldn't lose the population, but still I would also delay this upgrade. I would have to disband something. It just overall didn't feel that great. And then I decided to do something and went for a little bit of a gamble, because I decided to push here. I thought, if the refugees are revealed now, I will just go for that ocean liner build, and that's then somewhat fine. It's not really that equally fine, because if I get hit by the refugees after finishing the ocean liner service, I have a free population to lose, while now I would have to destroy something, which is certainly not ideal. Maybe I could lose the HA farm for now, but that wouldn't be ideal, so it would be bad if the refugees are revealed, but maybe not as bad as maybe I would lose them anyway if I go for the ocean liner. So I could get punished a little bit here, but maybe it's also not too bad, as I thought finishing the ocean liner is maybe just a solid way to go for me, and I will still do that, and I just have to destroy something and instead of just losing a free population. However, if the refugees are not revealed, then I can go for that strength increase play with a significantly increased chance of actually winning the refugees. First of all, of course, there's then only one event left, meaning that if Vantablack, for example, just seeds, it will be revealed immediately. But even if he doesn't see it, the other event that isn't the refugees, are the Ravages of Time. If he loses the Ravages of Time, out of the sudden he loses another happy phase, meaning that he unless he's willing to upgrade an alchemy to drama, but I do think for a 4-player game that would be too early, so that would be a heavy step from him, meaning that he might just needs to build an organized religion. The thing is, if he spends 4 science on the organized religion, he doesn't have enough science left to go for the military theory, meaning that even after his turn, I might be the strongest, and then at some point it's just likely that someone will push. Wolves can't easily get stronger, Multimedia also can't that easily get stronger, so I felt like if I win the coin flip here, I maybe get quite something nice out of it, winning the refugees. Not losing the refugees, not losing the culture, and actually gaining a population, and then maybe finishing the ocean liner next turn. And so I decided to go for that event seed. I seed the emigration, and I do hit the coin flip here, which of course I was very happy to see. And now I will lose the pyramids, but the 1 civil action, I mean, would have been somewhat useful, but I can also play the turn without it. And Vantablack has now to lose the Colosseum. It's unfortunate for Multimedia, because now after I will get stronger, he will be the weakest, and has now the danger of getting hit by the refugees. So, yeah, that's definitely unfortunate for him. The first thing that I will do this turn, as you can see, is taking the revolutionary idea, because I felt if I developed a cavalryman here, now I'm just too low in science if I don't take it, and with the revolutionary idea, maybe I have enough to keep the scientific cooperation pact and profit further from it. So I really wanted to take that copy of revolutionary idea, and then as said, I considered just finishing the ocean liner, but now that the refugees is actually the last card in the deck, and that Vantablack can't really go for the military theory that easily, I was willing to play the reserves for food, increase my population, develop the cavalryman, build one, and then I decided on disbanding a warrior, copying the tactic, going up to 25 strength, and with the 1 civil action left, I decided on taking the reserves. Now with losing the pyramids to the Ravages of Time, it's kind of forced that I need to disband a warrior, because I need to reserves in order to have enough resources to finish the ocean liner at the next turn, which I think I should certainly do. Probably. But before, considering that I don't see it at all, I could have also destroyed something else with the remaining civil action, but maybe the warrior would have been the best regardless, as I'm even without it now the strongest, and I don't lose any economical value like that. And now, of course, I need to hope that one of my opponents will see it, and that maybe Vantablack doesn't go for putting an alchemy into drama in order to not having to go for the organized religion. It costs me, of course, also some H3 draws, which can hurt. At least I do get a bit lucky. I draw an impact here that I can push with being on coal mines. Vantablack doesn't push, so the refugees aren't revealed yet. Instead, he offers the international trade agreement to wolves. He himself gets additional resources. And as you can see, Vantablack is committing to the organized religion, builds one, takes the military theory and the frugality, and he doesn't have enough science to develop the military theory this turn, meaning I do stay the strongest here. And wolves will push, so I do win the refugees. Multimedia loses a population. The event deck certainly has been somewhat harsh to him, and I will gain an additional population. Wolves goes for the team sports. There's Pierre coming down the road, so let's see if he is willing to pay to take him for expensive. He builds the team sports, and indeed, he just takes Pierre here. Maybe can keep Newton for quite some time. He's a strong leader to have, also in H3, and then at some point just switch to Pierre, get some decent culture reduction, and the Olympic Games. Multimedia offers a peace treaty to wolves, which is interestingly accepted, so both players are fine to remove the option of attacking each other for a bit of additional culture. Multimedia, I think, lost a... No, he didn't lose a swordsman, he lost the strength because of the Colossus. He, of course, lost just a 3 population. He has a lot of unhappy workers lying around. He builds another swordsman, maybe otherwise would be in danger of an aggression, takes the engineering and the professional sports, but now losing the refugee certainly makes his position even more tough. Now it's my turn, and this turn I will actually cancel the Scientific Cooperation Pact. Maybe I should be brave enough and keep it. But the thing is, wolves can again just, if he keeps the pact, maybe develop architecture, develop journalism, build a journalism, get to his technologies in the turn that I have planned. This turn I don't develop any technology, and so I thought it's a nice time to just cancel this pact here. So I have an interesting pact game. I had a naval trade agreement, a promise of military protection, a scientific cooperation. Now I have cancelled that pact, so I've offered a lot of pact and now also cancelled one. I will gain a population with the refugees. there's a copy of Air Force on the row, and as you can see, I take it for 3 civil actions. Because the classic army without Air Force, I do think, has its limitation on how much strength I can threaten, so I thought I just need to take that. And if I take that, I generally, of course, don't really have a chance to take the fast food chains. I have the ocean liner service lying around. But I could now, for example, if I don't take Churchill, which I revealed now already, I could, with the 4 civil actions that I would have left, just play the reserves resource, finish the ocean liner, and then maybe take the reserves. Or I could actually upgrade 1 more mine with James Watt, and then maybe take both the reserves and the engineering genius. So I would have some interesting options, and going for Churchill here will cost me a bit of economical value. But I at the end was willing to do it, because I can now go for 1 more upgrade with James Watt and replace him very early. And when we take a look at the remaining leaders, now that sadly Pierre is taken away by wolves, I would have of course loved to get Pierre here. I don't have any labs for Sid Meier and Steve Jobs. At the moment I don't have any theaters and only a printing press for Fleming and Chaplin. And for Mandela I will build a bread and circuses this turn, because I have pushed the immigration earlier and don't want to lose a population potentially. So I thought the leaders after Churchill are just not that great, and maybe it would actually take me quite a while until I can go for leaders. So I thought maybe it's better to just get Churchill now. It means delaying the ocean liner, but it could be that if I finish the ocean liner, and if I would do that, I would not have enough resources left to also build an arena, that if the immigration is revealed, I again would just lose the population. So the events are now for the 2nd time in a row just threatening a population loss, which makes it that I will delay the ocean liner now to a point where it is kind of very late. But still, I would be stuck on my current amount of population. Every additional population that I will get might still be very much worth it. So I still think it's bad in a sense to have it here. So it wasn't a clear decision. I could also just take some yellow cards and then wait for a different leader, but Churchill is giving me now culture immediately. I can use him maybe for science and resources to build an air force at some point, potentially even at the next turn. And then with the last civil action I will build a bread and circuses so that I'm safe from the immigration. Maybe I could have also taken the risk and taken 1 of those yellow cards. Now that I haven't finished the ocean liner, the engineering genius could have been nice, but it could just be that the immigration is revealed, and so I do think it's maybe fine to just play it safe and build a bread and circuses. Vantablack this turn will copy the classic army tactic, develops the military theory, so is now at 28 strength, builds another theater, is now already at 11 culture production, gets some yellow cards and also the civil service. wolvs seeds and opens the Cold War, which I was very happy to see. I now further profit from my strength increase and get 6 additional science. And wolves, I said it earlier, if he gets something like early computers or multimedia, his Newton can out of the sudden get a very strong leader. Maybe also now justifying him taking him for 3 civil actions. And then he also takes the engineering genius. The fast food chains might actually get discarded here potentially. Multimedia seeds. The international agreement is revealed, which sadly is now won by Vantablack, who is the strongest. He will go for Steve Jobs, who helps him quite a bit with his happy faces. He doesn't have any leader at the moment, so just taking any that is available early might be best. He can develop the cavalryman, scoring some culture with Steve Jobs, builds some, increases his population, and then ends his turn. And then now it is my turn, and I am the 2nd strongest. I thought I will just start pushing some impacts in there and decided to push the impact of industry. The event revealed is the immigration, so maybe I wouldn't see it, but it also would then of course be a downside if I would have gone for finishing the ocean line, and maybe would have an unhappy worker. But yeah, as you can see, the immigration is now revealed, and Multimedia will lose a population, so he again gets hit by some events. But I think there was a time where he was actually weakest, and one event, if you might remember it, in there is actually the Independence Declaration, which would have cost him the vast territory. I thought, oh, that could cause some big frustration for him if now even that event is revealed on top of all what he has already suffered. But for now, he at least avoided to get hit by that one, but yeah, has suffered by enough other bad events. Now I think it's time to finally build this ocean liner service. Thanks to the architecture, it's only costing me 2 civil actions. I can use it to get a new population immediately. And then I have some civil actions left, and as you can see, I decide to go for the democracy here. Maybe I could try something with wars, but just building an air force definitely won't make it. And then I have now maybe finished the ocean liner service too late, so that I can just easily build more tactics. I felt like trying something with the military is not the right call, especially because I don't have any war in hand yet anyway. It's of course the case that Vantablack has Bach. He's producing him for culture a turn. He can maybe build another cheap drama, and he might start running a little bit away with culture, which is a bit threatening, but for now I still have a small lead. And I thought if I maybe now develop the democracy and have the Churchill culture on top, I'm also making 10 culture a turn for now, which I think is quite a fine amount. So I was willing to take the democracy here. It's not the ideal upgrade from Conmon to democracy, but nonetheless, I just want to get a culture reduction here. I played a revolutionary idea. I developed a democracy. At least I'm now also on 8 civil actions, which is an improvement. And then I have 3 civil actions left. I could just take the revolutionary idea, but I instead took the multimedia and the patriotism. Having the patriotism just makes me maybe a bit safer in case one of my opponents will try to go for a bit of strength. Maybe Martha Pêcheur, with being in a bit of a desperate situation. If he gets the second copy of military theory, could just go for lots of cavalrymen, copy the classic army, go for military theory. Maybe he somehow gets also a copy of air forces, and things could get a bit dangerous. So I thought having more military resource could be fine, but in case the game stays more peaceful, then also having the multimedia, being able to upgrade the printing press, maybe even build a new one, could be quite strong as well. Could have also considered a modern infantry to be prepared for more tactics. Now I do actually draw some wars, but I thought it's unlikely that I will make use of them. Vantablack sadly finds nice ways to use the international agreement, and that's certainly giving him a boost here. He's able to take the space flight for expensive without it influencing his turn negatively, takes the movies, and has now the wonder. The only wonders left are now United Nations will be discarded before my turn, so only Manhattan Project and Empire State Building are left for me. And I felt like with him having this Bach production and now having a wonder, I might have some difficulties, especially with, in addition to the impact of industry, not having drawn a good impact here. And yeah, I felt like maybe he is running a little bit away here, but if I maybe get some impacts and can generally set myself up for impacts nicely, maybe I certainly can also still finish before him. He builds a theater here, taking the revolutionary idea, the reserves in the air forces, with the air forces, and also the ability to develop it thanks to the revolutionary idea. I do think it's completely safe from any wars at this point. Wolves seeds, the independence declaration is now revealed, but Wolves doesn't have any colonies. He develops the architecture for free with Newton, goes for the Manhattan Project, and with the engineering genius will just finish it, making him the strongest now. He also scores a very respectable amount of culture, and yeah, maybe just with not knowing where he gets the air forces, felt that it's maybe safer to just go for that Manhattan Project. Maybe if he gets democracy at the next turn, he has just enough science to develop it. Martha Pêcheur seeds, opens the inhabited territory, and he is able to win it for actually just a swordsman. So now finally also something good happens to him. His Suez Canal gets a bit bigger. He takes the computers in hand, maybe can go for some upgrades soon. Maybe could have even upgraded already instead of taking the revolutionary idea, but decides to take the revolutionary idea for now. Maybe he also still wants to keep the military options alive and does some investments here, or not really. He, instead of developing the computers, will just build one in order to get more science, then also builds a cavalryman going up to 30 strength. But if Wolves is willing to sacrifice a unit, he actually also knows. Not really. We should of course remember the peace treaty. So normally Wolves could have now sacrificed and get a safe aggression against Mortar, but this peace treaty makes Mortar safe here. This turn at my politics phase, it was a decision between, do I want to just push an event maybe for 2 culture, even though both events are somewhat annoying. Maybe I can build an air force this turn and prepare for the international agreement. So maybe that could be a somewhat fine event to push, but maybe I can also play it a bit more greedily and go for the multimedia actually this turn, which I considered. And who knows, maybe the additional strength from the military alliance could still be valuable. So I offered that to Martha Pêcheur. For him, the situation generally looks quite bad, so he is now the target of the pact for me. As said, I could use Churchill and develop the air forces, build one, but I wasn't sure what it will achieve at the end. I don't think I can really threaten anyone here. Wolves has Imichi Castle, Mortar Pêcheur, can just threaten to build a lot of cavalrymen. I mean, maybe I could do something, but it would just require some destruction to a point where maybe the war could be worthwhile against the one opponent that I declared against, but not against the other two with having to do some destruction. And so I thought I rather want to go for the multimedia. I will develop the multimedia, I will build one, I take the military build-up, I do think that makes me just quite a bit safer having that available. The thing is, I'm now missing one science to develop the air forces, and just threatening another classic army tactic might be a bit too few, so I decided to, after taking the satellites, which could allow me to get a very big impact of progress, and sometimes you just need to open yourself up towards things that would be nice, especially in a situation where you are maybe fearing that a player like Vantablack, and who knows, even wolvs, is now ahead in me in culture after finishing the Manhattan project. I don't have any impact in hand right now. Maybe I just need to hope towards getting one very influential impact, and impact of progress certainly could be one. And so I just wanted to have those satellites available, and then with the last two civil actions I will play the reserves here, build another printing press, making it that I'm now at 9 science instead of 8 at the next turn, making it that with Churchill I can develop the air forces at the next turn, and with the additional resource from Churchill, patriotism and military build-up, I actually have enough resources to build not only an air force but even another classic army tactic. So even though I did a somewhat greedy investment into those multimedias, I'm still completely safe for my next turn. I draw the Impact of Wonders, which at least against Vantablack is quite a big one. I have a solid amount of wonders while he doesn't. Vantablack goes for an interesting line here. First of all, he pushes an impact, the prosperity is revealed, which gives me additional food, and all of the players, of course. He goes for an interesting line here, takes the computers, plays the revolutionary idea, develops the computers, builds one, upgrades one, takes the democracy, plays the reserves, and upgrades another computer. So he is going for some insanely big science production. And there is Admire coming, so that's now a very strong leader for him. He has the space flight, so if he develops more technology thanks to the additional science, it will also score him some culture. But he is maybe playing it a bit too greedily here, because now he has 10 resources left plus 4. And that's just one too few in order to threaten to go for building a knight, a rifleman, and an air force. Meaning the most he can threaten is now to go for an air force, a knight, and a warrior. And we will see that will actually maybe bite him a little bit. And maybe he just, generally I think a good idea, going for that. Also helps for a lot of impacts. But the last upgrade with using the reserves, maybe just wanted to spend his action somewhat nicely. But that maybe was a tiny bit too greedy here. And we will also, on the other hand, see a very big reward of that play, because he went from 4 to 15 science production at the last turn, and then the popularization of science is revealed, which sadly now gives both wolvs and Vantablack, who at this point I thought are my main contenders, with Mortar Pêcheur having still a very challenging and bad position. Sadly, those are getting more culture than me. Vantablack gets an instant reward. When I saw this event revealed, I thought, dang, that's the reason why Vantablack went for it. He seeded this 1H2 event, knew that it is coming, now wanted to get a lot of culture, but when we check, it's actually an event seeded by the red player, which is wolves. So Vantablack didn't have knowledge about it. Could have maybe only guessed it. It certainly is an event that would make sense to seed for wolves, but he didn't have safe knowledge about it. Wolves, interestingly, takes the fundamentalism here for 3 civil actions. Maybe thinks about the possibility of him going still for a bit of a military heavy push at the next turn. Or maybe just wants to be a bit safer, goes for Pierre this turn and builds 2 more arenas. Going up to 15 culture production. There are still 8 cards left at Mortar Pêcheur's turn, so he definitely can't end the age, especially with the slow civil actions. He develops the engineering, goes for the computers, can develop both this turn, so I think it makes sense how he's played it with the revolutionary idea. Can develop 2 techs, builds a cavalryman, it's now at 44 strength. At my turn, I just thought about, okay, I will push the Impact of Wonders, and then I will just build more culture production, but I felt like, dang, the other players are running away, Vantablack will get the space flight, and then I remembered that Vantablack has done those heavy investments, and despite me first not thinking that it might be possible, I actually came to the conclusion here that with Vantablack maybe having just played it one tiny bit, maybe one tiny resource, he invested too much, so that he can't threaten now to go for another classic army plus one air force. And with that, he will now be the target of a war from me. And combined with me ending up taking those reserves, he is at an awkward spot, because if he goes for a reasonable defense, then he can't finish the space flight. If I don't take those reserves, he could go for one air force, not invest into more defense, just one air force, and then with taking the reserves he could still finish the space flight. But now with me denying the reserves, we will talk about it also a bit more, but just to highlight that already, he either needs to invest only very few, losing the war by quite a bit, or he defends better, but then he loses the culture of the spaceflight completely. So here he maybe does get a bit punished. He got rewarded with the popularization of science, but now he gets a bit punished by getting hit by this war. It's an interesting war, not the usual way how you normally go for one. Normally you just build more tactics and try to fulfill a tactic as often as possible. But this time I actually just use Churchill to get the Air Force going, to play the patriotism. The additional military action is extremely important here. Play the military build-up. I have now lots of resources available, and I will just build 1, 2, 3 Air Forces, putting me at 52 strength. The best Vantablack can do is to build an Air Force, build a Knight, and a Warrior. And to get at least an outdated tactic going, he then gets plus 12 for the tactics. He gets a plus 8 for the units, and that puts him at 48. Potentially could even build another warrior, I think. Yes. Then he would be at 49 if he does that, and Martha Pêcheur cancels the military alliance. We could tie, but otherwise my win should be guaranteed. Potentially it is a small win. So I thought about that maybe I could actually leave the reserves on purpose on the row for Vantablack, because that would allow him to still have the option to finish the spaceflight, luring him into a direction where I would maybe then end up stealing more culture from him. The thing is, Vantablack will probably be one of my direct contenders, and I thought maybe even the most direct one, potentially, even though wolvs also is, of course, we are all three relatively close, but Vantablack will now get hit by this war, and I felt like maybe I won't have enough power to overtake wolves, but Vantablack might have to destroy some things now. He might get punished by some impacts. If I take the reserves, he can't finish the wonder. I could leave him the reserves, but him not finishing him making it that he can finish the wonder, he will of course do, because he thinks it's the better play for himself. And it is also the better play for himself, meaning that I would allow him a better option to get more points in wolves, and I just thought that maybe I'm a bit closer with Vantablack than with wolves. And so I decided to actually cut the reserves here, which will also allow me maybe to build a bit more stuff at my turn. Now I have one civil action left, and I do think I do a little bit of a questionable decision here, an understandable one, but maybe a bit of a questionable one, potentially not a correct one, and I maybe overlooked one or two things here. Maybe the most straightforward line would be to take the endowment. It's not much, but it might give me 2 additional culture. If I'm lucky and maybe the bad impacts for me are revealed first, I could even get 4 culture out of it. Then I would also deny it from Vantablack, who might have the ability to pick it up with as many civil actions, and he might get 4 culture out of it. So I get 2 culture, he gets maybe 4 culture if I don't take it, so that's already a bit of a swing. The thing is, which made me go for a different line, when we take a look at my opponents, Vantablack, 2 selective breedings, wolvs, 2 selective breedings, Martha Pêcheur, 2 irrigations with Machu Picchu. Some impacts are already in there. I thought for all of the players it actually makes sense to push the impact of agriculture, which for the moment is a bad impact for me. And if I go down, or if I lose all of the yellow tokens in my bank, then I certainly don't have more production and consumption. Additionally, Vantablack could have seeded the impact of balance. Wolves could have seeded the impact of balance. Multimedia maybe not quite yet, but if he builds a movie, could have also seeded the impact of balance. So I thought both of those impacts maybe are relatively likely to be in there, and I at my next turn can maybe improve both of them if I take the mechanized agriculture instead of the endowment. And yeah, so I end up taking the mechanized agriculture here, and I do think it's correct that those impacts are likely. It's of course also the case that a bunch of impacts are already in there, and at the next turn I want to seed my impact of wonders likely, unless I want to try an aggression. But wolves and Multimedia are already in a position where they likely can defend, and Vantablack, now that I take the reserves away, might also defend quite a lot. So I will probably push the impact of wonders, the others might also push, and I could be right about impact of agriculture and balance being likely to be in there, but it could also be that those are just revealed before my next turn, before I have the option to deploy that mechanized agriculture. And the thing is, doing the things that I do when I go for the mechanized agriculture, I could also do different things instead. And that would be to maybe go for one more multimedia potentially, or maybe a religion. I have some different options depending on what impacts I want to be prepared for. And instead of the mechanized agriculture, I would develop the satellites, which also gives me +6 for potential impact of progress. The thing is, I thought that maybe it's rather unlikely that that is pushed by one of my opponents, especially if I go for the satellites. So I thought that is just an unlikely impact, while impact of balance and agriculture are maybe likely impacts. Vantablack might have to destroy some mines here, so impact of balance is also an impact that might allow myself to catch up some points to Vantablack. So I do think also that makes sense. Nonetheless, there's also impact of variety that gets improved, and then there's one thing that I overlooked. And it's maybe also not that easy to see, but with doing some deeper calculations I maybe could have seen it. The thing is, Vantablack, now that he can't finish the spaceflight anyway, unless he basically doesn't do anything to improve his strength, apart maybe from building a knight and a warrior, but if he destroys mines, then again he can't finish the spaceflight. So he's basically forced into defending more and not finishing the spaceflight. And he might likely, if he is forced into that anyway, go for the biggest defense that he can do, which is going for one Air Force, a knight, and a warrior. And then he will be at an amount of strength. Or probably he will destroy his mines. He doesn't have a lot of resource. He can't do a lot at his next turn anyway. And without the satellites, he at his last turn has the option to just go for one upgrade from warriors to riflemen, make his outdated classic army tactic a full one. And without the satellites, he will be one strength ahead of me. With the satellites, I would be ahead of him, and he also doesn't really have any option of getting more strength. Meaning that I overlooked that the satellites makes potentially a very relevant, or very likely a very relevant difference for the impact of strength, which is an impact that also could get seeded, especially by the players that are playing a bit behind and can maybe just increase their strength at the last turn. And with that impact being influenced by the satellites as well, and also with me, if I don't go for the mechanized agriculture, just getting some safe culture for myself with the endowment and removing some culture from Vantablack, I do think I should have just taken the endowment here. Even though I still see, of course, some of my arguments to go for the mechanized agriculture, I do think it's true that those impacts are likely, but they could be revealed, and I just probably get some save points and prepare myself just for different impacts. If I go for the satellites, I might get more safe culture. If I maybe go for an additional printing press, an additional upgrade, depending on how I want to play my turn exactly, I could also destroy something, build a farm, upgrade a farm to at least get a decent impact of balance going. So it's not that I don't have any options of improving that without the mechanized agriculture. So I actually thought a bit about it, but I think I'd probably do the wrong decision here. Vantablack, I was not interested, of course, how he will respond. The impact of industries revealed. I was a bit unhappy to see it because Vantablack will now destroy 2 mines, so it would have been better if maybe that would have stayed in the deck. But who knows, if there are indeed impact of agriculture balance in there, I might also be glad that those are not revealed now that I've somewhat committed to the mechanized agriculture line. Of course, not fully, I could still go for the satellites. Vantablack indeed goes for that play with building an Air Force, a Knight, and a Warrior, takes Sid Meier, who is in the row, going up to 18 culture production, and then takes the endowment. Now it's Wolf's turn. H4 will start, and he will just build a 4th team sports, going up to 17 culture production, takes the professional sports, just takes a bunch of cards, can maybe upgrade some arenas to be even better prepared for some impacts. Marta Becher goes for the professional sports. He doesn't cancel the military alliance, which is nice for me. But of course he also keeps the strength, which could be relevant. I steal 9 culture from Vantablack. I have a small lead before him. I push the impact of wonders. Intervention isn't really successful against anyone. And the impact of competition is revealed, which I was happy to see. It's a good impact for me, gives me points against all players besides Marta Becher, who is the one who I'm probably not in contention with, so a nice reveal. And with neither agriculture and balance being revealed, I will decide to go for the mechanized agriculture here. Maybe I still, even after having not taken the endowment and committed to the mechanized agriculture, should go for the satellites, as now it is very much visible that Vantablack might just not have that much else to do than upgrading this. Of course, he could also disband it, but it could make quite a difference for a potential impact of strength, so he might just upgrade it, and I would set myself up for the impact of strength, variety, progress, even though I still thought progress is unlikely. Maybe I should have still gone for that, but now, of course, the impacts... there's not the danger any longer that the impact of balance in agriculture might be revealed too early, and so I decided to go for the mechanized agriculture here. I build an arena, I go for an upgrade to mechanized agriculture, I go for an upgrade to multimedia, and then I just take the oil. There could have been other interesting options, because if I would have gone for the satellites play, then I could maybe build a multimedia instead of upgrading one. I still would kind of need to upgrade an H8 to an H1 farm, as otherwise I would have famine. Being at 11 science production instead of 10, maybe it could make a difference for the impact of science, but probably not. Vantablack is 1 ahead. Marta Becher can just easily upgrade some. So I thought that doesn't make a difference, but probably it wouldn't be the right call. But maybe it's still something to consider. I could not upgrade my farm at all, lose 4 culture to famine to increase my science production by another 1 with building a multimedia and a printing press, I think, if I remember it correctly, but I think I can do it. And then it would be at 12, and Vantablack can't really increase his science production. I mean, he can't even build an alchemy, and the HA labs are actually not producing any culture now, any science now that he has Sid Meier, so I could make it that I'm ahead of Vantablack instead of being behind him for the impact of science. And it could be an impact seeded by either Vantablack, who went heavily into those computers, or maybe Marta Becher, who easily can win the impact of science if he upgrades it. So maybe that could be something to consider. And now that it's even now a close call whether I should go for those agricultures, upgrades, or satellites, even though there haven't been any of those impacts, impact of balance or agriculture revealed, makes it that I probably should have just taken the endowment at the turn before. Then I could have committed to the other play and could have gotten some additional culture and would have taken away some culture from Vantablack. But I now went for the agriculture, maybe also somewhat just thinking that I now kind of have committed to it, which is of course a wrong way to think. Each turn should be evaluated by itself and not by what you have done before. There's no need to think now only because you have done an action in the past, you now need to follow up on it. Of course, if you don't follow up on it, it doesn't make sense that you did the move before, but sometimes you just need to realize that you maybe have done a mistake. And it's just better to not follow up on it. So it's, I think, a mistake a lot of players make, that they are thinking, okay, and now I have taken that card for expensive at the turn before, now I have to invest into it immediately, otherwise it would have been not worth it to take it. But that's not a way you should think about situations in games. The impact of population is revealed. Again, another one that is fine for me so far. I'm somewhat happy about the impact reveals. Only the impact of industry could have been maybe revealed a bit later, but I certainly don't want to complain. So far it's looking quite nicely. Vantablack develops the democracy, upgrades the warrior to rifleman. Sadly, it's now one strength ahead of me. Now it's Wolf's turn. He sees the impact of agriculture is revealed. So maybe after all, going for those farm upgrades might actually pay off, if the impact of balance is in there as well, which would be a very strong one against Vantablack. That certainly could still pay off. So I get now +1 against all of the opponents, and otherwise it would have been quite a bad impact for me. Wolves develops the military theory, yes, destroys an HA lab, gets stronger. I was a bit worried now. That could be a sign the impact of strength is in there, but maybe he is also just thinking that maybe the impact of strength is in there. Multimedia seeds, impact of culture is revealed, which is sadly not that great of an impact for me. And he will develop the rockets, upgrades one lab so that he is nicely prepared for an impact of science, builds a cavalryman, and that is at 62 strength. So all of the opponents have been gotten stronger, and that made me think, dang, it might be very likely that an impact of strength is in there. And now it could make quite a big difference whether I would have the satellites developed or not. Before the final impact, sadly, as you can see, I'm also 10 culture behind, both Vantablack and Wolves. I need to hope for the right ones, and there certainly are some that could give me a lot of points. Impact of balance would be quite big against Vantablack. The impact of wonders will be quite decent against him, so I can maybe catch up some points. Wolves is a bit better prepared for impact, so I thought my chance against him are a bit more slim. And as you can see, the first impact is my impact of wonders. I am now only 3 culture behind Vantablack out of the sudden. There is the impact of architecture, which also could have been maybe a bit better if I not would have gone for the farms and instead maybe for a bit more culture reduction. Then there is the impact of strength. It was just very likely after seeing the plays of the opponents, sadly making it that Vantablack has now an 11 points lead before the last 2 impacts. And there's also the impact of science. So the famine turn would have been the right call at the end, taking endowment, then going for satellites famine turn to overtake Vantablack for the impact of science. In hindsight, might have been the best call. Sadly, now it's another impact where Vantablack gets a lead. And the last one is actually the impact of progress, so that one is in there. Of course, we don't know if it would have been in there if I would have developed the satellites, but yeah, there's no impact of balance, but there is actually the impact of progress and the impact of strength, so developing the satellites could have had quite an impact. So I made a wrong call here with not taking the endowment and committing to that mechanized agriculture play. I think I would have needed both impact of agriculture and balance to be in there in order to maybe make it worth it that it pays off, and even then it might not pay off with an impact of strength in there and stuff, and impact of progress. So yeah, I think that was a misstep from my side. If it would have made a difference, remains to be seen. I do think if I would have played it perfectly with all of the hindsight things that I know now, taking endowment, I think I should have done even without anything in hindsight, but then the famine turn to overtake Vantablack in science production would be a tough decision to make. But if I would have done that, I do think maybe that could have been enough to at least finish before Vantablack, maybe still not before Wolves, I guess. Also, as you can see, Wolves and Vantablack have the same amount of culture, so there's no clear winner, there's a tie, and there have been already 2 ties before in this season. So it's in this Master 1 group, it's really the season of ties, the 3rd tie already. Normally that's something rare that you see at most once per season, and most of the times not even once per season. Now there is already the 3rd tie, and yeah, I am sadly only finishing 3rd, at least before Martin Pêcheur, who is a contender for the race for the 1st place, but still not a result that I was too happy about. I did some interesting calls, going for the printing press, had some interesting decisions with the Ocean Liner service and delaying that one. I do think I had an interesting setup here. I felt that maybe there should have been more possible than this 3rd place. maybe I made some small missteps, especially of course with not taking the endowment instead of mechanized agriculture. And yeah, so I was a bit disappointed. I felt that maybe more was possible. James Watt has definitely done a nice job. Yeah, but at least, but at the end, yeah, only a third place, and yeah, we can now see what that means for the standings. There has been no other game finished, and it's actually quite a nice time to take a look at the standings because all players have the same amount of games finished. And despite not having had the greatest results, it's still looking somewhat solid for me. I'm at the second position, but I have now a 4-point deficit to Vantablack. So I think I'm only playing one more game against him. That, of course, will now be very important, and it could be very important to finish before him. But yeah, I still I'm in the second position. If I finish my last games in a nice manner, I still definitely have chances to finish first and maybe get back to the Grandmaster division. Overall, it's relatively close. Marta Bashir being 1.5 points behind me, wolvs then being 1 point behind Marta Bashir, Mayondo, Elsifix, and Lech at this point are maybe have rather to think about not getting focus not getting relegated, but it's that close that if they start a winning series for the last 3 games, who knows, they could also still have chances to actually advance to the Grandmaster division. Alright, with that we are at the end of the video. I hope it was an interesting game for you to watch, and I hope you're excited for the remaining 3 games of the season to come. And yeah, then I say thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.